Welcome to the channel. Here, we dive deep into powerful books and break down their ideas in a calm, thoughtful way. In today's episode, we explore the essence of nihilism, a thought-provoking look into meaning, existence, and the idea that life may not have inherent purpose. If you enjoy clear, thoughtful breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for more.
I want you to imagine, just for a second, a radically different version of reality. Like, what if absolutely nothing has ever been created?
Right, which is already a huge thing to wrap your head around.
Exactly. And what if nothing will ever be destroyed? Like, what if every single moment of your life, every stray thought you had this morning, every time you spilled a cup of coffee, every ancient civilization that has ever risen and fallen, what if all of that exists permanently, indestructibly, and eternally?
It's a wild thought experiment.
It really is. I mean, Shakespeare wrote in King Lear, "Nothing will come of nothing." And today, we're taking that line more literally than you probably ever thought possible. Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah, and holding on to that exact rule, the idea that nothing can ever truly come from nothing and nothing can ever become nothing, that literally got the Italian philosopher Emanuele Severino put on trial for heresy.
Wait, a literal heresy trial in modern times?
Yeah. He was officially excommunicated by the Vatican in 1970. Because, if his logic holds up, everything we believe about birth, death, the flow of time, and, even the nature of God, it's all a complete illusion.
Which is just staggering. So today we are diving deep into Severino's groundbreaking and obviously incredibly provocative work, The Essence of Nihilism.
And we really need to redefine some terms here right off the bat.
For sure, because usually when we talk about nihilism on this deep dive, we're looking at it through like a Nietzschean lens, the collapse of universal values, the death of God, or maybe just a general sense of modern cynicism.
Right, the sort of everyday, nothing matters vibe.
Exactly. But Severino takes the concept in a completely different, much more literal direction. He argues that our entire civilization is infected by a foundational philosophical mistake that was made like thousands of years ago in ancient Greece.
And to fix it, we basically have to completely dismantle your common sense understanding of time and change. It's not just an abstract puzzle.
No, it's not. It's a total paradigm shift. We are so heavily conditioned to think of life as this fleeting spark in the dark. We neatly categorize reality into the past, the present, and the future.
But if you step into Severino's framework, that entire timeline just collapses.
It totally does. We're looking at a landscape that challenges the absolute bedrock of Western civilization, of modern capitalism, communism, and honestly, even the modern scientific method. We're going to travel from the ancient Greeks all the way to the dropping of the atomic bomb today.
It's a huge journey. But before we get into the really dense, rigorous logic of Severino's argument, because it does get very deep and very precise, we should probably give you a visual framework.
Yeah, I think we need a way to understand the feeling of this philosophy before we parse the mechanics. And in the foreword to the book, Alessandro Carrera uses this brilliant metaphor. He says Severino's philosophical system is like a magical castle.
It's a highly evocative image, and it perfectly sets the stage for the kind of alienation we're about to explore. What's really fascinating here is how Carrera contrasts the inside of this castle with the outside world. He notes that outside the castle walls, the modern world operates on the fundamental belief that everything is transient.
Like everything is decaying, rusting, aging.
Exactly. Outside, we think everything is destined to eventually pass away into the void. But inside the castle walls, the architecture of reality is entirely different. Inside, everything is incontrovertible. It's eternal, joyous, and glorious.
But, and this is the ultimate twist here, Carrera points out that Severino, acting as the gentle host of this magical castle, walks up to you and tells you that you're fundamentally mistaken.
There is no outside.
Right. There is no outside at all. Everything is inside the castle. Nothing passes. Nothing is transient. The walls of this castle encompass the entirety of reality, past, present, and future.
Precisely. And to build the architecture of this all-encompassing castle, Severino argues for what he calls a triple eternity.
Okay, let's unpack that.
This is the absolute core of his stance against mainstream Western philosophy, specifically against thinkers like Plato and Heidegger, who he accuses of submitting being to the tyranny of time. So the first part of this triple eternity is the eternity of the entity.
The entity, so like a specific thing.
Yeah, exactly. It means Every single slice of reality, every specific thing that exists forever.
Okay, got it. What's the second part?
The second part is the eternity of the horizon. This is the space or the dimension where these entities appear. He argues that space itself is eternal.
Okay, so the things are eternal and the space they show up in is eternal.
Right. And the third part is the eternity of the order. This is the underlying system, the immutable necessity by which things either hide or show themselves within that horizon.
Wait, I need to stop you there because the immediate assumption anyone is going to make, and I mean, I'm making it right now, is about immortality.
Yeah, that's the classic trap.
Right, like if every entity is eternal, does this mean I am immortal? Because that sounds like I just get to live forever, biological clock be damned.
That is the exact trap most people fall into when they first encounter this. And Severino goes to great lengths to make a vital distinction here. Eternity is not immortality in time.
Okay, how so?
Well, empirical, the biological organism that goes to work, gets tired, eats dinner, and physically ages, does not live forever in a sequential, endless timeline. Time stretching infinitely into the future is a religious or, frankly, just a conventional notion.
So it's not like the 80-year-old version of me is just wandering around forever.
Exactly. Severino's concept of eternity is entirely different. He is saying that every specific, discrete moment of your existence is. And because it actively possesses being, it cannot not be.
So it's that the version of me sitting in this chair right at this exact second, talking to you into this microphone, is a permanent fixture of reality.
Exactly. Whatever is cannot come into being from nothingness, nor can it cease to be and become nothingness. So the exact moment you are experiencing right now, that specific constellation of thoughts, the temperature of the room, the sound of this conversation, that moment is indestructible. It doesn't fade into the past to die. It simply remains forever in the architecture of being.
Okay, to make this concrete for you listening, I want to bring in an analogy mentioned in the sources. Think of Jorge Luis Borges's famous short story, The Elephant, or Sigmund Freud's vision of Rome and civilization and its discontents.
Those are perfect examples for this.
I want you to imagine taking a synchronic picture of the entire universe, like a photograph where absolutely everything that has ever disappeared from view, everything that is currently appearing, and everything that will ever appear in the future is all visible at once in one massive, overwhelming, simultaneous image.
It's almost too much for the human brain to process.
It is. You are seeing the past, present, and future not as points on a moving line, but as a solid, permanent geometric structure. That breathtaking, almost terrifying image, that is Severino's concept of being.
It is a true glimpse of the absolute real. And when you fully grasp the weight of that image, you can immediately see why this got Severino into a heresy trial with the Supreme Sacred Congregation of the Holy Office.
Right, because of the implications for God. I mean, if the universe is a permanent, eternal block, where does a creator even fit in?
Nowhere. Literally nowhere. If all beings are strictly eternal, if they have always been and will always be exactly as they are in the structure of eternity, then they cannot be created.
Because creation implies a before and after.
Exactly. The very act of divine creation ex nihilo, out of nothing, implies that God brings things out of nothingness into existence. It implies that before creation, you, the earth, the stars, were literally nothing.
And Severino says you can't have that.
Right. Severino argues that it is logically impossible for a nothing to become a something. The concepts are completely mutually exclusive.
And if things can be created from nothing, the terrifying flip side of that is that they can be annihilated back into nothing.
Exactly. And Severino flatly rejects this. For him, being cannot be created, not even by an omnipotent God, because being is eternal necessity. This completely undermines the fundamental Catholic doctrine of creationism, hence his excommunication.
I mean, this is a massive paradigm shift, but it brings up a huge glaring question for me.
What's that?
If Severino is right, and literally everything is eternal and creation is a total illusion, why does our entire society, our science, our religions, our daily common sense believe in birth, decay, and death? Like, why are we so obsessed with the transient nature of life if it's fundamentally a lie?
That is the big question. And to answer that, we have to trace this back to what Severino considers the original sin of Western thought. And this requires a total redefinition of a word we throw around all the time: nihilism.
You're right. Because usually, like we said earlier, we hear nihilism and we think of a rejection of meaning or morals. We think of someone saying, nothing matters.
But Severino strips the word down to its absolute literal Latin root, nihil, meaning nothing. For Severino, the true essence of nihilism isn't the emotional or cynical belief that life has no meaning. It is the ontological belief that things are nothing.
I really want to chew on that phrase for a second. The belief that things are nothing. Because it sounds like a paradox. How can a thing be nothing?
It means believing that beings, whether that's a giant oak tree, a human being, a passing thought, or an entire civilization, can emerge from nothingness, exist for a brief period, and then return to nothingness.
I see.
It is the profound, unquestioned conviction that the ultimate fate of a something is to become a nothing. For Severino, this is the supreme alienation of human thought. We have literally convinced ourselves that the void is real.
Wow. And he describes this split using two paths from ancient Greek philosophy, right? The path of day and the path of night. Let's look at the path of day first.
Yeah, so the path of day was articulated by the ancient pre-Socratic philosopher Parmenides. He is basically the intellectual father of this eternal framework.
The guy who got it right, according to Severino.
Yeah, exactly. Parmenides famously asserted, being is and may not be. It is the path of pure, absolute eternity of all things. If a thing is, it is logically impossible for it to contain even a drop of non-existence. It simply is.
Which is incredibly beautiful and stabilizing. But then there's the path of night.
The path of night is the grand mistake. It is the belief that things oscillate between being and nothing.
Like flicking a switch on and off.
Yes,
Yeah.
It is the mindset that says, yes, this oak tree is a being right now, but before it was an acorn, it was nothing. And 100 years from now, after it rots into the soil, its treeness becomes nothing. It is the fatal assumption that a thing can harbor nothingness within its destiny.
So who took us down the path of night? If Parmenides had it right, who messed it up?
Well, the text points the finger directly at Plato.
Plato.
Yeah, it accuses Plato of committing parricide, the philosophical murder of his intellectual father Parmenides, to invent what we now casually refer to as the world.
Parricide is a pretty dramatic term, but the stakes here were unimaginably high.
Oh, absolutely. Plato looked at Parmenides' unbroken, eternal, unchanging block of being, and he basically found it too rigid.
Like, how do you explain going to the market and buying an apple if everything is one eternal block?
Right. It was too absolute to account for our everyday, chaotic experience of change, movement, and suffering. So Plato introduced a compromise. He essentially allowed for non-being to exist in a relative sense.
Okay, how did he do that?
He created a dualism. He said there is the eternal world of perfect ideas, and then there is this flawed, transient, physical world of appearances where things are born and die.
I want to pause on this because the psychological weight of what Plato did is staggering. The text actually compares this moment to the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan's concept of the primal signifier.
Yes, that's a brilliant connection.
It's as if Plato had to fracture the absolute unbreakable oneness of being just so we could have a practical, disposable world. Like, we traded the terrifying beauty of eternal truth for the convenience of having a before and an after. We sacrificed eternity just so we could have clocks, calendars, and a narrative of progress.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. We needed a narrative, so we invented time. And the consequence of that choice is the foundation of the modern mind.
Because now we're stuck with it.
Exactly. By inventing the world of becoming, a place where things transition from not existing to not existing again, the West essentially willed that things be time. We forced reality into a linear timeline. And by placing things in time, we inadvertently forced ourselves to believe that a being can be nothing.
Because if you say something used to exist but no longer exists, you are making a terrifying metaphysical claim. You are saying that right now, that specific thing is a nothing.
Right, you're equating something with nothing.
And this is the profound tragedy Severino is exposing. Our entire civilization's ultimate, deeply unconscious belief is that the spark of existence, the fact that we are breathing and conscious right now, is actually just an anomaly surrounded by the infinite night of nothingness.
We literally believe that life is just a brief, accidental interruption of non-existence.
Which is why Severino says this is the ultimate nihilism. It's this deep sickness of the West. We believe that we, and everything we love, are destined to become nothing. It is a philosophy of despair disguised as common sense.
And we don't even question it. We just accept it as the baseline of reality.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about Plato, and I understand the psychological comfort of Parmenides' eternal being. But, I'm not letting you off the hook that easily here.
I wouldn't expect you to.
Look out the window, things change. I watch ice melt into water. I watch a piece of wood burn into smoke and ash. I see things become other things every single day. You can't just tell me it's an illusion.
It's the most natural objection in the world.
Yeah, right. Doesn't Aristotle's famous principle of non-contradiction prove that a thing can't be and not be at the same time? Logic itself demands that things change, doesn't it?
This is where we have to dive into the absolute deep end of Severino's logic, because he anticipates exactly this objection. He takes us deep into a critique of Aristotle, specifically from Book 4 of Aristotle's Metaphysics.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts.
Severino sets out to dismantle the very principle that Western logic is built upon.
All right, break down the trap. How does Aristotle, one of the greatest logicians in human history, fall into a trap?
Well, Aristotle formulates the principle of non-contradiction to defend being against nothingness. He says it is impossible for the same attribute to simultaneously belong and not belong to the same object.
Right, that makes total sense.
Therefore, he states, when what is not, it necessarily is not. It sounds like an airtight defense. He's saying a thing can't exist and not exist at the exact same moment. A house cannot be fully built and completely destroyed simultaneously.
Right, it sounds like basic common sense. Like we said earlier, a switch is either on or off. You can't have both.
But Severino points out the fatal flaw in the language.
Yeah.
Listen closely to the phrase, when a house is not.
Okay, when a house is not.
What are we actually saying in that sentence? The word house refers to a specific positive being, a concrete reality with walls, a roof, a specific geometry. It is not nothing.
Yeah.
But when we say the house is not, we are taking the concept of nothing and applying it directly to the house.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following. You're saying we're taking a positive reality of the house and declaring it to be a negative void?
Precisely. Severino argues that the principle of non-contradiction actually contains a contradiction within its very formulation, and the trap lies entirely in the concept of time. The word when is the giveaway.
Oh, the when.
Yes, Aristotle assumes that a being can be itself right now, but it could be nothing at a different time. By saying being is not being at the same time, Western philosophy is trying to shut the stable door after the horse is bolted.
Because they've already admitted the horse can leave.
Exactly.
By adding the condition of time, they've already conceded that being can be nothing as long as it happens at a different point on the timeline.
They have conceded the war to nihilism while trying to win a battle of logic. They allowed nothingness to infect the timeline.
Let's use a real-world thought experiment from the text to make this inescapable for the listener, because it's a lot to process.
Yeah, let's ground it.
Think of a pen sitting on your desk. It has shape, weight, color, ink. It is a specific determination of being. It is a not nothing.
Right.
Now imagine you break the pen in half and throw it into a high-temperature incinerator. It burns up completely. Common sense, Aristotle's common sense says this pen doesn't exist anymore.
But Severino says, look at what you are doing with your thought process there. You are taking the concept of the pen, which is fundamentally a not nothing, and you are applying the concept of nothing to it. You are literally thinking the absurd, impossible thought. The not nothing is nothing.
Because the pen was something, and now you're calling it nothing.
Exactly. And Severino argues that human logic, if it is to be rigorous and true to itself, cannot allow a positive to equal a negative.
Yeah.
You cannot predicate nothing onto a something. Nothing can only be predicated of nothing.
Okay, I follow the logic, and I see how Aristotle slipped up with the when, but I am still looking at the incinerator.
I know, the physical evidence is hard to ignore.
The ashes are there, the smoke went up the chimney, but the pen, the thing I used to write, is gone. My actual daily physical experience shows me it's gone. If Severino is completely rejecting becoming, the idea that things are created and destroyed, how does he explain what my eyes are showing me when the pen burns? Or to raise the stakes to the ultimate level, what is happening when a person dies?
This is the critical pivot in Severino's entire system. Since he completely rejects that beings can become nothing, he has to redefine what we falsely call change.
So what does he call it?
He introduces the concept of appearing. For Severino, change in the world is not the creation or annihilation of beings. Change is merely the supervening and vanishing of eternal beings into and out of the horizon of appearing.
So it's not disappearing, it's more like a shadow, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Like if I cast a shadow on a piece of white paper and then I turn my head or step out of the room, the shadow leaves my immediate circle of visibility. But the shadow hasn't been annihilated, it hasn't died, it just isn't showing itself to me right now.
That is a very apt analogy. The text also uses this beautiful image of the sea. Imagine the ocean water covering a sandy bed. Then the tide rolls out, uncovering the edges of the sand.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The sand didn't cease to exist when it was covered by the water, and it wasn't newly created out of nothingness when the tide went out. It simply entered and left the field of visibility.
It's all about visibility, not existence.
Exactly. What we call experience, or the flow of time, is just the shifting light of appearing. This leads Severino to define the structure of what he calls the destiny of truth.
And what does that structure look like?
In reality, there are two distinct elements at play. First, there are the things that come and go. He calls these the variants, or the earth. These are the passing moments, the burning pens, the changing seasons.
The sand on the beach.
Right. But behind them, acting as the foundation, there is the eternal background, the truth of being, which he calls the never-setting background.
Because it never sets, like a sun that never goes down, illuminating the stage.
Yes. Without this eternal background, without the permanent stage, the actors, the variants, could never appear in the first place. The stage itself is eternal, and the actors themselves are eternal. They're just stepping into the spotlight and then stepping back into the wings.
I really want to sit with this for a moment because the implications for how we process existence, and specifically grief, are just staggering. If we apply Severino's logic, we have to completely redefine the most terrifying concepts in human existence: birth and death.
It changes everything about how we view a lifespan.
Right. If birth isn't emerging from nothingness, what is it?
In this framework, birth is simply that which has never appeared before, finally entering the light of appearing. The being was always there in eternity, waiting in the wings of the never-setting background, and birth is simply its entrance cue onto the stage of visibility.
And death.
Death is that which has not reappeared. When someone dies, they absolutely do not return to nothingness. They simply step out of the circle of appearing. They exit the stage.
The text explicitly notes that even the ashes of that burned piece of paper, or the very last tongue of flame that consumed it, exist eternally. They don't vanish into the void. They just leave our immediate horizon of experience.
Exactly.
Severino says that the dead, always and forever, dwell in the company of all being. They are safe. They are permanent. They are just outside our current field of vision. It completely removes the absolute terror of the void from the equation of loss.
It really is a philosophy of ultimate preservation. But what's fascinating, and frankly quite dark, is how this ancient Greek error, this path of night, the belief that things can become nothing, hasn't just shaped our personal psychological fears of death.
Right. It goes way beyond the personal.
It does. It has dictated the entire physical and economic structure of the modern world. We actually have to move from abstract metaphysics directly into modern geopolitics to see the full picture.
Which feels like a massive leap. I mean, how does a metaphysical argument about Aristotle and Parmenides end up explaining modern capitalism?
It's all based on how a civilization defines the thing. If our society believes that a thing can come from nothing and return to nothing, then a thing has no intrinsic eternal value. It is fundamentally unstable and disposable.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Because of this nihilistic belief, we eventually evolved to see things merely as absolute availability for production and destruction.
We view reality as raw material. Nothing is sacred because everything is temporary.
Precisely. If a forest isn't an eternal, indestructible grouping of beings, but just a temporary manifestation of matter that will eventually become nothing anyway, then there's no metaphysical or moral barrier to chopping it down to produce lumber. Technology, guided by modern science, is the absolute peak of this alienation. We view the entire world, nature, human labor, the sky, the atom itself, as stuff to be manipulated, produced, and destroyed at will.
The text uses a devastating example to illustrate this, and it really grounds the philosophy in historical trauma. It brings up Hiroshima.
It's a very powerful, very somber example.
When the atomic bomb was dropped, physics tells us that the total amount of energy in the universe remained exactly the same. Energy is conserved, it just changes form. But Severino points out that Hiroshima wasn't just a blind quantity of energy.
No, it was much more than that.
It was a highly specific unity of shapes, of colors, of sounds, of memories of human lives. And the technological capability to annihilate that city, to vaporize that specific unity into ash, is entirely built on the philosophical assumption that things can become nothing.
Technology isn't just tools in this view. It is the physical manifestation of nihilism. It is the literal machinery of making things into nothing.
And this is why Severino takes a highly impartial, elevated, and almost detached view of global conflicts, right? As our text points out, and to be clear to you listening, we're just reporting Severino's framework here without taking any political sides. He looks at the Cold War or any modern geopolitical struggle, capitalism versus communism, democracy versus absolutism, And he argues that these are merely surface-level conflicts.
Right. To him, they are just different flavors of the same core problem.
But how so? Because to the people living through them, they seem like complete existential opposites.
Well, because underneath the ideological rhetoric, both left-wing and right-wing powers rely on the exact same technological scientific apparatus. And more importantly, they share the exact same underlying nihilistic belief.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
The capitalist society wants to infinitely produce and consume goods for profit. A communist society wants to infinitely organize industrial production for the masses. Both systems absolutely believe in the infinite production and destruction of reality. They both treat being as raw material to be optimized. They're essentially just arguing over who gets to operate the machine.
So if everyone is playing the same nihilistic game, what is the outcome? Where does this leave the modern world?
This is what Severino calls the setting of the West. To win this global struggle, a power must constantly enhance its technology. It has to build better weapons, faster computers, more efficient factories, better AI.
The arms race of production.
Exactly. And eventually, the technology itself becomes the supreme goal, overriding the original ideology, whether that was freedom, democracy, or equality.
The tool becomes the master.
Right. The winning power ultimately loses itself because it becomes entirely subservient to the technological apparatus it built to win. The West is destined to decline because it is fundamentally in contradiction with the truth of being. It is trying to operate a reality built on eternity as if it were a reality built on nothingness.
It's like trying to run a marathon while holding your breath because you refuse to believe in oxygen. Eventually, the system just collapses under the weight of its own delusion.
Exactly. The machinery of nihilism eventually consumes its creators.
Okay, we've gone massive here. We've looked at the planet, the atomic bomb, and superpowers. Now, I want to bring this deep dive all the way down to the most intimate, personal level possible.
That's where it hits hardest.
Because if the whole world is trapped in this nihilistic machine, what happens to me? Am I just a gear in a machine? What happens to your own consciousness, your choices, your life?
To understand the personal stakes, we need to understand what Severino means by the Earth. In his terminology, the Earth isn't just the physical globe we stand on in space. The Earth is the totality of things that appear to us. It is our immediate, isolated experience of the variants coming and going.
And the problem is that we've isolated it, like we've zoomed in too close.
Exactly. We have isolated the Earth from the destiny of truth, from the never-setting background of eternity. We willed ourselves to be mortals by focusing only on the isolated Earth, on the things that come and go.
We forgot the stage and only stare at the actors.
Yes, because we only look at the transient actors, we fear our own annihilation. We identify completely with the vanishing shadow and forget the eternal light.
Which naturally leads to the ultimate question, the one that keeps people up at night when dealing with philosophy of eternity and necessity.
The free will question.
Exactly. If everything is eternal and everything is permanently fixed in the architecture of being, do I have free will? Did I freely choose to sit here and record this deep dive with you today? Did you freely choose to click play?
Severino's take on possibility is intense, and honestly, it's completely uncompromising. In his framework, possibility simply does not exist in being.
Wait, possibility doesn't exist, so everything is predetermined.
Think carefully about what a possibility actually is. If you say, it is possible I might have eaten an apple instead of a banana for breakfast, you are imagining a mode of being, you eating the apple, that currently does not exist in your timeline. You are treating it as a nothing.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. But we have already rigorously proven that it is logically impossible for being to be nothing. Therefore, if a possible being existed, it would mean it is currently nothing, which is absurd.
So everything that happens must happen. It is pure necessity.
Yes, but not in a bleak, deterministic way where you are just a helpless puppet. And this leads to one of the most mind-bending, almost hallucinatory quotes in the entire text. Severino says, "Always and forever I live the lives I might have lived."
Where, always and forever I live the lives I might have lived. That is incredibly profound. Unpack the mechanics of that for us. How is that possible?
Because every mode of existence, every specific determination of reality, is eternal and cannot be a nothing. Any life you could have lived, any choice you could have made, any person you could have married, any career you could have pursued, cannot be relegated to the status of nothingness.
Because that would violate the rule.
Exactly. Therefore, those alternate lives, those branching paths, are lived eternally. They are permanent, indestructible fixtures in the architecture of being, just like the life you are consciously experiencing in this exact horizon of appearing right now. You are the locus where all these eternal lives converge.
So all the ghosts of my past choices aren't ghosts at all. They are real, eternal blocks of being. But if I'm living all these variations eternally, what actually am I? Like if I'm not just a biological spark that flickers out, what is human consciousness in Severino's universe?
In Severino's framework, the I is the eternal consciousness of self-consciousness. You are not a fleeting occurrence on the earth. The I is the eternal place, the open clearing, where the light of truth illuminates the eternal being.
The stage lights.
Exactly. You are the eternal appearing of being itself. You are the stage lights that allow the eternal play to be seen. You are the space where eternity recognizes itself.
That is an unbelievable place to land. We have covered an immense amount of conceptual ground today.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
We started with the heresy of claiming that all beings are eternal and cannot be created or destroyed. We walked through Aristotle's logical trap that accidentally validated nothingness and doomed the West.
Right, the win.
We explored how this single ancient philosophical error ballooned into the planetary nihilism of modern techno-capitalism, treating the Earth as disposable material. And finally, we arrived at this profound, dizzying realization that death is an illusion, a mere stepping out of the light of appearing, and that every possible life you could live is secured forever in eternity.
It is a complete reversal of how we are taught to see the world from birth. It demands that we look at the transients around us, the aging faces, the burning wood, the shifting seasons, not as a tragic march toward the void, but as a majestic, eternal procession of indestructible realities moving in and out of the light.
And that leaves us with a final concept for you, the listener, to mull over on your own as you go about your day. If Severino is right, and there is absolutely no such thing as nothing, if every fleeting feeling you have, every split-second choice you make, and every single moment of joy or pain you experience is a permanent, indestructible jewel locked forever in the eternal structure of being, how does that change the way you value this exact present second?
It entirely transforms the weight and the privilege of the present moment.
It really does. If this moment right now never vanishes, but merely steps out of the light to be preserved forever, what light will you choose to shine on the world tomorrow? Thank you for joining us on this incredibly complex, mind-expanding deep dive today. Keep questioning, keep digging, and keep exploring the vast eternal architecture of your own reality.